Hello YouTube, this is Ben Gessel. I'm going to probably make a few videos today. It's Friday, June 22nd, I think, 2017. Um, so, um, going to be a very toasty weekend, by the way, in Western Washington. So, you guys in the more, the little hotter areas of the world, closer to the equator, can kind of laugh a little bit at our expense. It's okay. Um, so, this video is going to be, well, I'm going to call it negative trends in the world media and how I plan to combat them. Um, and there's all kinds of things that you can say about this subject. It's just at the outset, it should be obvious to anybody that the world is getting, I mean, specifically media in the Western world. But the world in general is just getting more wicked, evil, more vicious, uh, more base. And in the Western world, our entertainment, things in the media and being made professionally, there's a lot of it isn't what it used to be, and oftentimes the most interesting stories and movies and things are the ones that have the most potentially spiritually damaging um, qualities about them, depending on all the things that we just can't see, but we can feel. I mean, again, we're talking about things that are having to do with good and evil and that sort of thing. The reason why a lot of things that there's some things a lot of people don't really understand. They don't. There's a lot of things that certain things about good and evil. Right. What I'm trying to say is there's some things about when you talk about the word spiritual, about good and evil. There are certain things that a lot of people don't fully comprehend, understand in a very deep emotional and spiritual sense. A lot of people get it wrong, in especially in the Western world. Um, there's all kinds of things that can cause someone to feel depressed, for instance, or angry, or discouraged, or disillusioned, and all these other things, or other such negative things. But a lot of times there's more of a direct. It's more. It can be a little less mysterious sometimes what's going on with some folks, or many folks, or if someone has perpetually a darker countenance, a less if you feel very joyous and happy and excited, and you feel that way around people that are good, that's a good thing. If you feel more at ease around people that are scummier, well, that should be an indication that things are not going so well for you spiritually. You're actually, in fact, headed down the wrong path. And this is what a lot of people can't have a hard time. This is what a lot of people have a hard time internalizing. But so that's where I'm coming from. It might seem I could probably put this in a spiritual kind of vein with these most videos, but so how do I plan to combat? Then that being said, how do I plan to combat these negative trends in the world media? Let's talk about some of the big ones and what they are. one of the big things that I've noticed is that you, I don't know, some of you guys might remember how in the 80s, for instance, 70s even too, 70s and 80s, there were a lot of movies that were made that had um, good triumphed over evil, and they were fun, they were adventurous, exciting, fun to watch. Some of them actually had more interest maybe for adults. At least it was more of a more substance to them and more thought provoking, or wasn't quite as basic of an idea for some of these movies. Like a good example of this would be The Princess Bride, or Legend. Legend had Tim Curry as a devil. I know, but Good Triumph of Evil, or Labyrinth, right? And I'm not saying all these movies are the best movies that have ever been made, but their overall tone, especially toward the end, you had Good Triumph of Evil, and um, you look at movies in the last 10 years, and I think Harry Potter is probably before then a little bit. So, but we'll just say, Harry Potter was one of the greats a while back. But just with regards to fantasy movies, that uh, I remember some movies that were made, I suppose, with Nicolas Cage. Nicolas Cage himself has a lot of interest in fantasy, which is really great. But there was like a witch movie, but it wasn't quite as. We're not talking. I think what I'm trying to say is that there's a kind of an emptiness when it comes to those um, movies that are inspiring, that are imaginative in the last little while. Instead of uplifting fantasy or uplifting science fiction, even if that matter, or even scary movies or horror movies that are um, thought provoking and um, do something for you, right? Something good, I would think. Instead of all that, you get mindless. I'm not saying all zombie movies are bad, but you get a lot of mindless monster movies. You get a lot of doomsday movies. And I guess sticking with that fantasy, sci-fi, horror genre, there's a ton of horror movies. Again, I talked about this before. There's a lot of remakes, a lot of poorly made movies, or just a lot of B-budget movies. But there's a lot of we had Ender's Game, which is great, but that was based anything that's worth seeing. There's already been a book that movie's based on. So I'm talking about there's something is morally wrong with Hollywood increasingly. A lot of folks are like, why make adventure movies of any like fantasy or sci-fi or action? Why make an adventure movie that's inspiring when you could make movies that are Hollywood seems to think that everybody wants violence and sex now, basically. No, we don't. No, we actually want still some good stories. So what's the deal, Hollywood? So how am I going to combat this? Well, how have I been combating this? This is the way of putting this. What have I been doing to not drive myself crazy with the lack of these great movies? Well, because someone can say, you know, Ben, I mean, like, you were a boy in the 80s. Obviously, we would have liked those movies a lot more than if you as an adult. Well, okay, but it's still, I mean, I would know a good movie when I saw a good movie. Um, whether or not it was for kids or for adults. And Frozen is kind of, no. Yeah, some fine, it's okay music that was written for it. That's an afterthought. That's like a, if you're comparing movies to food or a meal, Frozen is like a frozen fruit cupcake or tart or something. It's not French dip sandwich. French dip sandwich should be Chronicles of Narnia or something. Uh, Chronicles of Narnia was made a while back, but that was one of dozens of remakes of that. And I mean, the 1979 animated version of Chronicles of Narnia still beats all its other ones. Anyway, so okay, movies. So how have I been working? Well, basically, I've seen a fair number of. I've had some duds, right? I have Netflix. That's not working out so hot recently. My opinion of Netflix is going south. But I can't say anything else is even better. So comparatively, Netflix is still the best, but everything is just getting worse. But Netflix is still, I think, the best value for what you get. But again, with streaming, they just don't have very much at all. I mean, it depends on if you like TV shows and if you don't like TV shows. Like, I don't like TV shows. You know. So, anyway, but I've used Netflix. I mean, right now, again, someone else pays for TV here, so I just watch, what's on. And, that's nice to kind of have. And I have a DVD collection that I might go back to, but I sometimes think it's... I mean, I would rather trade with people and with DVDs. And gosh, I mean, why not? The more people you know that have different DVD collections, just trade with them. Especially if they have stuff that you might want to see that you don't have, and you give it back to them, and they'll give it back to you. Or you might actually hold on to it, and who really cares? Because movies are so, that's part of the problem, is that they're become so cheapened, especially more recent ones, because they're not as good as they used to be. I mean, so nobody wants to pay for them. The only ones who want to pay for are the ones, I mean, I'm speaking for myself, the only movies I want to pay for are the ones that are outstanding. Really, really good. But what else have I been doing? Well, I've just tried to do other things aside from watching movies. And then, I mean, there's YouTube. YouTube still has some gems here and there. A lot of stuff I haven't seen before. And I'll sometimes strike out, but sometimes you'll find something good. And the great thing about YouTube is you can always read the comments on a video before you watch it. And then the comments will also tell you sometimes additional things in the content of the movie that you wouldn't have known at any rate. Either you can look at the description, but you definitely look at the comments and you can say, oh, this movie is a dud. Or this movie might be worth watching because I am different than these folks. I like this kind of thing more than many other folks. So that's movies. I don't probably need to mention much about video games. There's a lot of avenues to go with video games if you want to play older stuff. I don't think video games at this point are as much of an issue with media, unless we're talking about those MMORPGs, which I haven't played at all, ever. That's just, the rip-off, so. Kind of. Yeah, they are. Well, they suck up your time. So I never did them. But with other media, so music. I'm pretty okay there because I've never really had a huge interest in pop music. I mean, bubblegum pop or top 40 pop, right? My interest in music lie elsewhere, and you can probably get that from my other videos. So, again, the video is called Negative Trends in the World and Media. So, movies are kind of the big thing for me that, tend to be the thing to look out for the most, maybe in my life. Potentially, but I mean, I don't know. Like, so, um, basically, when it comes to the news and trends in the world, right? Um, so on that note, I've noticed um, a lot more anger again happening amongst people in the world. I don't need to go into why. And I've noticed a lot more. Uh, Everybody's on the edge. People don't seem as friendly as they used to be. Um, it's sometimes harder to. I mean, sometimes it's harder just to feel. There's a lot of things about my life that are a little bit unique, but it's sometimes harder just to find joy in a social sense. Um, it depends, but it's kind of like a well, if I keep getting all this negative kind of vibe from someone in my adult years, there's no reason to keep talking to them. But then again, no matter what you do, you keep doing that, keep shutting the door on negative things. But a lot of people, I noticed, also seem to have the wrong ideas about people, and some really very erroneous ideas about people that are good people. It's interesting that when you can call evil good and good evil, and I have noticed that. Or you can call something that's kind of lukewarm, and most things are kind of gray, I guess, in a sense. But when you can call something that's on the lighter side of gray, the darker side, when you consider a darker side of gray, it's shocking. It's why. Um, I don't need to get into examples, but it's kind of I guess I'll put it this way. So I've watched In Living Color, for instance, a while back, a lot of those things, and actually my parents wouldn't even let us see that stuff when I was younger. And In Living Color was just fine. It was 90s. It was edgy for the time, maybe a little bit. You look at that stuff, and it's like, oh, this is awesome, funny. Or it's kind of whatever. And I don't know. I'm like, compare that to I don't know. It doesn't have to be Saturday Night Live. SNL is a little different, but maybe something like yeah, just like a talk show, or like a I mean more I'm thinking more of like a late night show. You can compare late night shows from the late 80s, 90s to now, um, and there you'll see a difference in what is allowable, and also what a lot of people will want to laugh at. Um, and okay, and some people might have some very strong opinions about some different certain issues that come up on different shows. I think though that what I've noticed overall is that without looking at anything in particular, if something is good, again, if something is good, if some person is a more admirable person in some way, then they're going to be lampooned. Whatever is good and decent about a person, whatever, especially people that maybe are easier to make fun of, have more more things about them that. And trust me, folks, I'm not talking about Donald Trump here. That's not what I'm talking about at all. I'm talking about, um, you know, regular folks, or well, I'm sure you guys can give me a lot of examples. I could too, Um, my mom used to watch the Oprah Winfrey Show, for instance. Not so much anymore. This is another example we're talking about. It used to be maybe that, and Dr. Oz is a big hit with all the, especially middle-aged ladies and stuff, or whatever, older ladies. But for a while, I don't know if you guys can sense this, but there's been a movement away from. This is going into early generations a little bit, but there's been a movement away from the nuclear family in the Western world. It's been a movement away from Christianity and from, we'll just say traditional values, even more so than just Christianity. A movement away from traditional values and the nuclear family, and clear sense of right and wrong, and a movement toward whatever you think is right or wrong, or whatever you are okay with, or everything else outside of traditional Western values is what we're going to focus on, kind of thing. That's what's been happening for quite some time now. I don't ever remember. I mean, if you see something like that in the media that's in favor of traditional values, it's like Charlton Heston talking about God or something. It doesn't even have to be something like that. It can be something, oh, I don't know. Again, a movie like Where the Red Fern Grows, where the red fern grows. Right, it's a great movie, and it gets to you a little bit, but it has a lot of aspects to it that are very refining, right? Good for the soul. If you see a movie like that nowadays, it's like something by Will Smith, bless his heart. But it's inspirational, maybe. But I mean, like Will Smith is one of the few that will still make those kinds of movies, and maybe. So, and I don't need to mention like the news and things. So how am I managing all this? As best I can. It's important to have people that you can always talk to, just to kind of keep sense with your inner life and life outside. No matter how introverted one tends to be, that's a very, very important thing, along with just having human connections and things. So, but yeah, there's a lot of people say, increasingly these days, don't watch the news. I don't watch the news actually. I just go online for news, but mainly. But the older generations will do that. But you don't need to read the news, or it's mostly bad stuff. And there's a lot to be said for that. If in a given week, the lion's share of what I sense about all these more negative things that keep happening in modern times, that's coming from YouTube. Well, that's actually not too bad a situation, or maybe TV. But if it's mostly YouTube, then at least in that case, you can have the freedom to not watch something or watch something you'd want to. It's even a little bit better that way. But so if anybody out there knows any other I don't know, movie sources for things that maybe you haven't seen before, I don't know. But you guys can't know what I have or haven't seen. But if you guys know of some like websites that have great movies, even that cost a little bit of money, but they're all more uplifting, but they're not cheesy like Hallmark. I don't know Hallmark movies. I'm talking about real movies, or just media in general. If you know of anything that's more uplifting, we'll say, and also if you guys know of some websites or things to kind of combat this influx of very, I would say, dark media. A lot of people will also say things. Then, by all means, you can share them in the comments. But a lot of people also say, increasingly, you need to know what's going on. Well, I've heard this before. It's just true. It's important to know what's going on, but a lot of people also say things like somehow we need to know truth, or we need to know what's really happening, and we can't run away from truth, and we need to just face up to it, and don't just believe something that makes you feel good because it makes you feel good, kind of thing, in a lot of different aspects, but just in the news, and and there's a lot, like they say, fake news. Well, I guess the first thing I have about all that stuff is, why would someone need to know about fake news? Whether it's fake or real. And actually, another question is, what? Let's just talk about the news for a second. What things does someone absolutely? What things do people absolutely need to know about in the news? I mean, really, why do we have the news? Really, what things do you need to know? And some people think they need to know about this, that, this, that. Well, let's just get a little bit more specific here about the news for a second, because this is in the middle of what we're talking about here. These negative trends in the world and media. Well, okay. So, I think it's important to know if there's a world war that actually starts. Not rumors that might start or whatever. If it actually happens, if some country declares war, yeah, I want to know about something like that, right? But most of the time, 99.99% of the time, what we hear rumors of wars. We hear all these little skirmishes, all these little half wars. But that doesn't, kind of might affect us, but the less that something is a war and more just some little isolated thing, the more like, well, it's nice to know, but okay. But, like, obviously for personal safety, you probably would need to know about things like nuclear strikes and things, right? So that's kind of a given. I'll say that this is one of the things that news can do well. But, okay. Let's talk about, like, economics and things. I also believe economics are important to have some knowledge of, but most of us don't really, I don't know, if stocks or things here, but a lot of times you don't. There are a lot of things that go completely over our heads unless we're businessmen or economists or we understand these things. But I would put that as kind of a number two, economics in general, currency after war. Because I think it's still important. You want to still be financially okay, right? And the third thing would be anything involving violations of freedom of religion or speech or basic rights, or violation of right to bear arms. Anything in the Bill of Rights, anytime that you hear about something in the United States that violates those Bill of Rights, and it's not fake media, right? Or it's not fake news. That's something that's also important to know about. Number three. So violations of some aspects of Bill of Rights, economics, and war. What's important to know about after that? Well, let's talk about politics for a second, and political leaders and scandals and things. Scandals are depressing, and they happen most of the time. They don't, in my opinion, they don't go reported. They don't go reported. In my opinion, that's how jaded I am about government. But so is it newsworthy? Depends on how bad it is, I guess. Um, so you can, if the number of evil things that are going on in that arena are so numerous that it would take all your time just to wade through them, then no, it's just not worth it. I think it would be important though to know if, because of some countries stealing our military secrets, uh, we're probably going to have the entire West Coast annihilated. I think that would be important, but that goes into kind of the war, arena. So, with regards to a lot of things in government, it's just, oh, and then also like laws that are passed and things. Some laws were noteworthy, some aren't. I don't think it's really very important to know what Michelle Obama, for instance, thought would be a good idea to put in school lunches. That's interesting, but it's not news. And some part of me is saying, oh, this sounds a little bit like um, Bruce Almighty or something like that, right? And you had, of course, a sequel with Evan Almighty. I don't know, but Bruce, I don't know, wanted played by Jim Carrey. He wanted to be the big guy, telling the real news, right, rather than just doing the cutesy stuff. Why do they have cutesy things in the news things? So they can give us something that we can feel good about. But why is it that that's never something that's a big thing? Well, because there are a lot of big things that happen that are good to people, but they're not necessarily things that are always as um, far-reaching worldwide. So there's all these good things that are going on in our lives. Even something as simple as eating a little bit more plant food on a certain day will actually have a beneficial impact on someone. Um, you know, but that's not news. But that's a good thing. So you have all these good things, all these little things, right, that are happening in everyone's lives that are good, and these big things that might affect tons of people. Kind of balance it out a little bit. Good and evil. I don't know what. Maybe it's not quite like that, but essentially, you can keep going. You can try to find other things that are important to know about in the news. But at a certain point, it starts to become a personal interest rather than something that we actually need to know. I'm also associated with the war thing and the Bill of Rights thing. Has to do with all of the conspiracy theories. Once they actually, everything having to do with like being rounded up by FEMA and stuff. If once that actually is about to happen, or if it's really going to be happening, soon, that is news, right? That's news. The rumors of all that stuff, that's personal interest. That's not gonna. You can spend so much time on that. So, what do we really need to know about? What do we need to read about? The amount of time that someone should spend on keeping up with what's newsworthy. And there's probably a few other things I haven't thought of that are newsworthy, but not too many. But it shouldn't. The amount of time someone spends on the news, it shouldn't be more than 5-10 minutes. And the funny thing is that politicians know that, and that's one of the reasons why there's so many bad things going on, or other than all the secrecy and everything else that's also in place. It keeps these schmucks from being brought to justice, in my opinion. But the thing is, news does tend to pull you down. If you were to read about every little atrocity that's happening, for instance, in Africa and the Middle East, and a lot of places that in the world that are very unstable still, you could spend the entire day doing that. And so there's the day just gone. How do I plan on combating that? Well, just a lot of people, I just don't pay much attention to the news. Just the main things, and that's it. Sorry, newspaper journalists. I know there's always things that you can report on, and always things that are newsworthy. You think that are newsworthy, and I think there's still, with journalism, I think there's a lot of there's actually a lot of things you could do in journalism, especially with independent news that isn't fake news. Whatever. a lot of things you could do as a journalist still to have that be a worthwhile occupation. But it's like government. It's like, well, what are the functions of government? What is government? National, state, local. There's some things that national government should do, and some things that are kind of additional perks, right? It's nice to be able to anyway, and journalism is kind of the same thing. Some things we really want to know about, and some things are just if you want to know them. So other than all this stuff I'm talking about, there are a lot of things that I do just therapeutically, just to kind of deal with life. And I think it's important to everybody to have dozens of things that they can do to kind of just keep from going berserk crazy. As it is, I might actually take a hike tonight. Just go out and just enjoy the evening. But I might make, again, at least 1 or 2 more videos tonight. But, it's, I'll let you know how I survive this weekend. It's going to be really hot. Anyway, I'll catch you guys later. Take care. Bye.